Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fieros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, super excited. We've got a repeat guest on the show. We've got Jason Yarusi back on the show. Jason is a private fund manager overseeing $245 million in multifamily real estate portfolio with Yarusi Holdings. Since 2017, they've acquired over 2,300 apartment units. He's also an ultra runner and fitness enthusiast. I know we're going to dive a little bit into that. Yeah, maybe some new stuff here a little bit later on in the show. He's got a ton of stuff going on. Him and his wife are awesome. They still host the Multifamily Live podcast, leads a 7-figure multifamily mastermind. Obviously, he's also a proud father of 3, along with his wife, Peely, who we've also had on the show. So you guys might want to dive back into some of those prior episodes. It's been a couple of years, but they've both been great guests. And so definitely excited to have Jason back on the show. Jason, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be back.
Yeah, no, for those of our listeners who may not have caught the first episode, and that's episode 36. If you guys want to go back and check that one out, Duke and Vince had a great conversation with you during that one. So, but yeah, give us a kind of a brief recap just to kind of, if our listeners didn't get a chance to catch that episode, give us a little brief recap. How did you get started? Where are you at today? Like, how did you get to thousands of units of multifamily and this real estate empire you guys have?
Sure. So we live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee now. We moved here just about 3 years ago. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Peely was born and raised in Hawaii. We ended up meeting in New York City. It took me about a decade to get her to look my way. And at that point, that started the evolution of just the journey. So early, like 2011, Hurricane Sandy happened in New Jersey, a horrific storm decimated the East Coast. My family, my dad just retired, but had a very niche business where he lifted and moved homes, and he would lift homes a lot for flooding reasons, but you wouldn't do that much. He would just do it a couple times a year. But overnight, his business went from a couple jobs a year to thousands of calls a day. So my little brother was working for me. Of course, Peely was my girlfriend at the time. We had some restaurants, a bar. I had opened and sold a brewery in New York City. I had a bunch of different businesses going there. Well, we picked up and moved to New Jersey to help dad with his business. So over the course of the next almost 6-7 years, we did about 2,500 projects. So a lot of these construction projects, but it ultimately led us into real estate. We were constantly starting a small family, starting a young family here. We were looking at ways to really just get our time back. And everything we were doing, from the bar world, from the restaurant world to the construction world, was something of have to do to make. So do to make. And if you don't show up, of course, there's no money to be made. So we kept asking, what's the next step? And real estate seemed to be the logical step. However, we transitioned into the flipping world and a wholesaling world. So more, again, of a transactional environment. Well, over the course of just being open-minded and looking for more and more opportunities, we came upon someone who was investing out of state. We were in New Jersey. They were in New Jersey, and they were investing in the Midwest. And what they were doing is they were buying basically single-family homes. Well, we said that that model was interesting. I jumped in and started buying some 2 families and 3 families, put together a team. And lo and behold, that started to work very well. But it just wasn't massively scalable. I couldn't imagine having like 50 or 80 duplexes like all across the country. It just seemed like a logistical nightmare. So came upon a podcast like this where they were talking about buying large multifamily. And that was just that light bulb moment where I saw just the evolution of how we had small businesses and large businesses, same processes, but you could get so much more out of the large business, really to dive in, diversify, get the economies of scale, and just maximize value. Sold off all of our small properties, went all in. And in 2017, we bought our first property, which was a 94 unit, and that was in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's because you guys went into the bigger stuff right off the bat, right? I mean, and I guess at that point too, you're doing so much work. It's like playing whack-a-mole. I mean, we learned that pretty early on with our group. It's like, well, you're going a mile wide versus going a mile deep. And it's like, oh my goodness, like you're just like, because you got to build teams out for every one of these different markets and every different city that you're in. It starts to become, just like you mentioned, it's a logistical nightmare. It really is.
And that's one of the biggest hurdles I say to people in the beginning is like, just choose any market. You can win in any and every market, but you can't win in all the markets because there's going to be someone who's really focused on that market is going to crush you. Plus, if you're going to learn the steps to do it, if you're in 12 markets, well, you have to learn the market. You have to learn the team. You have to learn the property. You have to learn the demographics. You have to learn the customer base, the tenant base. You have to learn what kind of team you need. And now you're learning all these hurdles 10 times over instead of just figuring it out in one market. And even if you Say you do it in that market and ultimately is not the right market for you. Well, when you go to the next market, you're going to be able to implement the entire process 10 times quicker because you've already done it once instead of trying to do it 10 times across 10 markets.
Right. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's so vital. And now something I'll point out too, like to the listeners, like something that Jason didn't say is he said pick a market. He didn't say, hey, you have to pick the market that you're in. If it makes sense to buy at a distance, do that, but focus on that specific market. Because some people are like, well, Steve, I'm here in Hawaii. Like it's super expensive. I can't get a 94 unit complex like in Hawaii. Like the barrier to entry to something like that is just insane. They don't even make that here. It's like, well, okay, we're not saying, hey, you got to buy in New Jersey or you got to buy here in Hawaii or wherever, but pick a market. There's all kinds of, we've talked a lot about this on the show previously. Hey, there's all kinds of demographic indicators, market indicators about, hey, where can you direct your next steps? Listening to the show, listening to other episodes, and there's tons of resources out there now. Hey, where's the job growth? What states are landlord friendly? Like there's so many different things that can factor into helping you to make a decision, but make a decision, focus on that one, hammer that market, get really good at that market. And that way you're not kind of shotgunning it and kind of scattering all over the place. Cause that's going to lead you to do what Jason was sharing earlier. It's like, man, we've got a lot of stuff going on and you become very, very busy, but busy is not necessarily productive. So kudos to you guys for identifying that. I love your story because you guys have jumped in.
Yeah, it's the key with just picking a market because you could spend months, decades just trying to find the right market. There's a right market for everyone. There's groups in Hawaii that are killing it. How? I don't know, but like they have a business model that works for them. Same thing in New Jersey. There's groups there that are doing great and they just crush it. So they have a model that works for them. So you just have to find your model and implement it in your market.
Oh yeah, totally. Now, I'm curious, like how much of the background of, let's say your dad being an entrepreneur, right? Because he already kind of had this business of like, all right, well, hey, we're just moving houses. Cool strategy, by the way. But how much would you say that factored? Because you definitely have an entrepreneurial gene. It sounds like I'm talking about bars and restaurants and wholesaling and flipping. Like you obviously have not been scared to jump in and kind of create something for yourself or your family. How much do you think that, let's say, seeing your dad do that kind of factored into?
I mean, he had a different approach, right? That he comes from, his age is the work hard model. And that's the hard work will pay off. And it just is, hard work can be hard work. And so he did a lot of work and it was a very difficult industry he was in and he did well, just finally retired, which was great. However, there's a lot of lessons I learned there about, he always kept the business small. And so that kind of business being small, when we had to ramp it up, we had the logistics, like logistical nightmares to be able to scale a business that was very infrastructure heavy. So there was a lot of things that I learned really from him that was discipline and hard work that carried forward to all the things I do today. The business model, I also saw in the business model when we did go from, we had a couple calls that basically a month to having thousands of calls. I saw the difficulties of going from small to large and why if you set up the infrastructure where large, really the model works large and it's almost more difficult to do small. And that's what you really, if you look at multifamily real estate, it's easier for a larger property to sustain because you have more ability for it to function. You can have a team that can service the building where if you have a 6-unit, you can do fantastic with a 6-unit, but you can't have a full-time maintenance. You just can't have a dedicated team to it. Plus everything else is spread over less units, so less income. And so when I saw that with the business, when we had to scale the construction business to do that size, I had to get more trucks. We had to get more steel. We had more manpower, more opportunities, more leads, more marketing. So we had to outbound scale it, but it wasn't something like if I was going out there selling solar and I wasn't actually supplying the solar, I was just selling the solar, I could just get manpower. Well, here I needed manpower and I needed a lot of things that were built in materials. So I saw, okay, going forward on a business, I have to be careful because I can have a lot of sunk money in materials. And that once it's sunk in materials, here the investment is there until the need happens. So there's a lot of lessons you take away from businesses like that.
Oh, for sure. And like even just hearing you say that, it's like something that's so valuable that a lot of times like people overlook. It's like, man, you learn from, let's say, seeing the challenges, not necessarily, I mean, the wins, of course, like you want to glean from everything. Like, hey, I want to take away, okay, what did I see that was working well? Okay, great. I want to implement that. What did I see that was not working well? What is operationally inefficient? Like, what are some losses here that we can learn for it so that we can avoid that moving forward? I think too many times, like people aren't willing to share the losses. There's plenty of them out there, right? If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, like it's inevitable. Like you're going to face losses. So
The
don't
thing
be
that you
afraid
got
of
to
that.
look at
Yeah.
really when things don't go right, it would be silly to say, "Oh man, it just didn't go right," and then move forward, and then you just repeat it. And so,
Yeah.
yes, when things don't go right, sure, we don't want that, but that's our recipe for success because we have to say, "Okay, that did not work. I get it. Okay, why
Yeah.
didn't it work?" And when you ask why, you can look forward. Okay, the next time, was it my plan, my process? Was it a business itself? Was it the time? What was it that dictated that decision? So you can really put yourself in really position to succeed for the next time you actually go to the next step of your evolution.
Right, right. And yeah, now that kind of leads me to something I want to pick your brain about now. Like, okay, you guys have been in operations, let's say on the multifamily side, the last 6 years, almost longer now. What kind of lessons have you learned along the way that have helped you guys to navigate kind of the current market condition too? Hey, COVID was one, that was already one transition. And then now we walk into this kind of high rate environment, this additional market volatility. How have you been navigating these waters throughout these last few years?
Yeah, long-term fixed debt, cash flow, and reserves will sustain any market. And so if you look at those, like that's a viable business plan to always succeed. And you have to honestly, you have to have a short-term perspective, a long-term perspective, and a midterm perspective. So the more opportunity you
Mhm.
can have with your projects for you to adapt to the market, the better you will be. So for instance, right, like for the last probably like 18, 24 months, we've been searching out a lot of bank debt. It may not be the best terms. However, it's banks, a lot of relationships driver. I usually can get fixed. So we have fixed rate. It's usually going to be a 5-year term. Maybe I'll get a 1 or 2 years of IO. But the really big factor here is there's not a prohibitive prepayment penalty on the back end. So I can get in there and have the open idea where it's going to stay fixed. I have a 5-year runway. So we're into this deal and it's working with the loan that is. And the market continues, rates continue to go up. The times continue to be suspect. Okay, I can hang with this loan. Great. If times turn around, okay, well, now I have the opportunity. I can go and refinance in this and more, just a better loan for the project at the time, or I could sell. But I won't have a lot of these things dictating my decision because of the loan is actually setting me up for success.
Right, right. And that's the hard part. And like, we've seen that with operators in the business right now. Gosh, they weren't underwriting properly. Or, I mean, of course, it's going into this high rate environment right now. Like, it's really squeezed a lot of people. Like, even if your operations were okay, the debt is just really, really squeezing people. So I don't think people have a great understanding necessarily of that, especially people who are kind of looking from the outside in. Okay, well, it's less volatile, less impactful, let's say on a residential space, although of course you can get squeezed there too. But when you're talking about commercial debt, like, boy, the numbers get big, and that, bridge loan payments and, or if IO runs out, like, man, you're getting squeezed. So yeah, no, it's definitely a smart way to kind of go into this market and operate really in any time, like be conservative, don't push the envelope too much, that kind of deal. So now I'll kind of transition a little bit about that. And obviously you guys have been very aggressive. You guys have had incredible success. How's that been? We're going to switch gears a little bit right now. How has that been? Like, because I know you work with your spouse. How's that been kind of through all this? Like, it's just kind of more of the life component. How's that been working with your spouse kind of through all this to help manage everything, the business and all that?
So it honestly, we get asked that question a ton. However, Peely and I met in 2003 and we met basically working together first. So we spent 7, 8 years working together before we became a couple. So it was never the point of the work side of it to adapt to, it was the relationship side to adapt to it. And so that's been the biggest key, but working with Peely is great. It's fantastic. It's why we are successful as we are. What we've been able to do is because we both add value in our own way and keep each other on our own same path. That said, when you do work with your spouse or you even entrepreneurship or anything else, that one of the hardest things is that there is no clock in, clock out. And we love what we do. We do what we do because we love what we do. So there, you have to set your own barriers, your own barricades. So as your day goes, you can make sure you're functioning your best option in both worlds. Because when you're with family, you don't want to be thinking with work. When you're with work, you don't want to be thinking with family. And that's a very hard divide to break through just because of just the age of technology and just information right now. Everything's real time, things are happening. And we're talking 5 hours apart right now in just time zones. So we're all functioning in different ways too. So if you think about that, that's the biggest piece of working with your spouse is just setting up really the separation of church and state, where there is the family time, dedicated time together, and then there's business time. Now, is it a perfect balance that you say, okay, this is our perfect? No, but there's seasons. There may be times when the kids are sick. Okay, well, that needs more energy right now, regardless of where, or we might be going in that we're closing out a project or something else is happening on the business side, and it really needs a lot of energy at that time. So there's going to be seasons there, but if we can have the frame of how we want it to look, then we can adapt as needed for the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've kind of, for a long time, I was thinking, okay, this work-life balance thing. And
Yeah.
then you speak to it exactly right there where you're talking about, well, look, there's seasons like this. Now
Hmm.
it's more this, now it's more this rest run thing. It's like, no, we want to make progress. We're gonna have to run for a while. We can take a stop, we can breathe and we can rest for a little bit. But then, hey, you know what? We gotta run again. That kind of leads into, tell me about the Live 100, because I know you got
Sure.
something new going on. What's that about?
So I really was thinking about what we've done to just change, and change is hard. And I had a lot of bad habits for a long time, and that was a lot of the reasons I was where I was. And so I kept doing different things to change my pattern. And one of the models was just breaking my habits, building the future I want, and then magnifying those results. And that's a lot what Live 100 talks to. It's three foundational blocks: break, build, and magnify, built on 9 pillars. And the 9 pillars carry you through a journey of how you can evolve yourself from just taking your starting point. Because the truth is your starting line. Most of the time, we want the truth to be where we will be in the future. However, where you are today is where you are, and you have what you need to take the next step. And most of the time, we are really the recipe for us not taking the next step. We don't need anything else. So it's not, oh, if I had this money, or if I had this car, if I had this girlfriend, or I had this wife, or if I had this job, that I would have what I want. It has to start with us, because each and every day we wake up with the same mind that
Mhm.
wants to keep us where we are, and just it plays that mode to try to prevent us from taking those steps. And so each day we have to discipline ourselves and train ourselves to be really proactive, to not only be just intentional with what we want, but act on that, because we have the right intentions. Like most people don't want a worse life. Like they intend to have a better life. However, they are either scared, fearful, or just don't know how to act to take the next step there. And that can come from a lot of ways. When we're born, we have two fears: fear of falling down and the fear of loud noises. However, you think about all the things we're fearful of today, that has come upon our life from somewhere. Something has happened to put us in this perspective that we should be scared of something. And
Right,
it's
right,
hard to
right.
break those habits. And so when we are, I think 40% of our day is built on habits. So you repeat the same habits each and every day. So if you think about, if you have 10 bad habits, right, you're repeating them each and every day. And to break those habits can take training and discipline and consistency. So you have to be intentional to say, okay, that is my bad habit. How can I replace that bad habit tomorrow? It could be every day I hit the snooze button 7 times. So I'm supposed to get up at 5. And if you got up at 5, you would get up, you'd have a glass of water, you have a healthy breakfast, you go work out, and then you get your way on to work. But because you hit the snooze button 7 times, you get up, you're late, you eat something horrible because you're rushing out the door, you get stuck in traffic, and your day just explodes from there. So if you think about the idea of just getting up as a good habit, it's not easy the first time you do it, but the more you keep training yourself into that, look at all the other healthy things that follow that, helping you live a better life.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's 100. Now, what was the impetus for that? Was that just like, hey, you know what, man, this is just life lessons at this point? Was this networking or reading books and kind of getting input from different sources for that? Or like, what
Yeah,
was the,
life's a training series, and so it's been a roadmap of just my experience, just what it was. And we get asked a lot on this factor, just in terms of like just the things we've done, just from ultra running, just from like working together, just to building what we built, of just what do we do? And a lot of this is that it wasn't a perfect path. We just took action, and it's like the Bruce thing that like water goes to a cup, it goes to a bottle, wherever you put the water is, right? You have to adapt, and most of the time we want the world to adapt to us, and we won't change ourselves to start to make the world adapt for us. And so we started saying, okay, we need to make changes. You could see this when we started getting into real estate, started having a small family, started growing from where we were, even during COVID. Okay, it could be two ways. You could say, oh, what was me? Or we get out there and just really say, okay, I'm going to be my best. And so that was a lot of what Live 100 was that we were doing the same steps each and every day, but it was just putting them on the paper of what we were doing to really be aware of who we are, so we could reflect, take action, and grow upon who we want to be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that definitely speaks to something that we've kind of implemented in our family. We've tried to be real intentional about what we receive. What do you see? What do you hear? Because all of that kind of stuff, that speaks to your earlier comments about what we're fearful of. Well, guess what? If you've got the news on all day, and I know plenty of people who will do it, hey, you know what? I've just got the TV on in the background. Like they're listening to whatever. Like they're not really listening like actively, but guess what? If that message is playing, you're hearing it regardless. So you got to be intentional about what you're taking in, because that will shape exactly what your future is going to be. So choose wisely. the kind of messages that you're receiving. We got rid of our TV. I haven't had a TV in I don't know, gosh, I mean 6-7 years. And guess what? What I tell people frequently, it's like, well, I don't want to see somebody else's vision playing out on the screen in front of me. Like I want to go create my own vision. So we've got to remove the distraction, remove the outside input, and be focused. You can listen to great stuff like this podcast. You can listen to Jason and I having some good conversations about how to benefit yourself. Choose that versus the junk that's
and it's stuff you want to choose. My mom said, I wish the news would stop scaring me. I said, it's pretty easy to shut the news off. And that's it. Because most of the things that happen outside, like there are things in our world that we need to know about, but if they're going to happen, we're probably going to find out. But if you are so keen to the news, like if you shut it off tomorrow, you would not know 99% of those things ever existed because they're not impacting your life in any way. And the 1% of it, you'll find it. It's important enough. Like TVs came in like 1950s, whenever they came, right? Like there was a lot of people getting the news before that about things that were happening in the world. I think we can survive today.
Yeah, I think we'll be better off for it. That's kind of the danger of like social media and just the modern culture that we have with so much media, so much noise. It's like, yeah, you got to unplug from it, which I'm saying. Well, this is the time of the show where we kind of transition to what we call our fire round. Just a little bit more straightforward question, Q&A. Is that something you're up for?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First question. What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Best book. It's always, what was I reading recently? So it's always like the last one. So like right now I'm reading The Daily Dad. That's a good book. Just Daily Dad Principles, but it's always the last one. So The Go-Giver is always a great book. That's another one right there. It's always fantastic. I'm trying to think what was the one that was interesting recently, but there's Gary V. What was it, Gary V? 13. What is it? Is it 12 and 1? Yeah, 12 and 1, which I thought was good. Just talking about just like being candid, being self-aware, just basic principles in life that we forget to impart upon others, and we forget to actually take upon how they are acting as part of that, is just so we can be functioning best too. So that was a good one. So those are a couple books.
Yeah, those are good. All right, next question. What would you consider your superpower is besides being an ultra runner and a great dad?
I have a bulldog and I'm stubbornly persistent, right? And so I guess, and I'm also aggressively patient. And so I can be both ways of those.
I love that. I'm aggressively patient. Yeah, very good. All right. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far? There's so many, I know.
Yeah, there's always lessons. Ideally, inaction is always going to get you the same result. You have to take action. And with action, you have to have a guided plan, but be malleable that plan is going to change.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. You know what the outcome is to your inaction. Things are not going to change. Just sit on your hands. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. For the busy working professional that's trying to work towards financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
Know what that actually means. It's a very easy word to say. I want financial freedom. But if you say, well, what does that actually mean? Then no one actually, 80% of people can't tell you. And so like, do you need 4,000 hours? I want to leave my job. Okay. So what does it take to leave your job? Do you need 4,000 hours of cash flow a month? So be really particular what you need. And you'll find you're probably not as far from it as you want, but because you don't know exactly what you need, you're thinking of it like this, like Mount Kilimanjaro event for you to get there. When in fact, if you were really dialed into exactly what you need, you'd probably be able to back in re-engineering that plan for you to get there 10 times quicker.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think you're 100% right that most people are so much closer to realizing their dreams and what they need in their life. But just, again, cut out the noise, sit down, get some clarity, get some focus, and you're spot on with that. Well, if our audience wants to reach out to you, obviously we've listed off a number of different ways, but what's kind of the best way for them to connect with you guys and find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah. YarusiHoldings.com is our website right there. You'll see all about our offerings. I'm Jason Yarusi on social, and the Live 100 podcast. You can find that. It's our new podcast out there doing a lot about what we just talked about earlier.
Yeah, right on. Well, Jason, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Guys, definitely make sure that you're going out and checking him out. Go subscribe to his podcast, leave him a 5-star review, and give him some feedback. It's been a pleasure having you back on the show. I'm glad we've got a chance to connect. So I really appreciate you. And go continue to crush it. I really appreciate you a lot.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you.
All right. Great episode recording again with having Jason Yarusi back on the show. Again, he's been a previous guest. He was back on episode 36. Peely, his wife, I believe she was on episode 41. So go back, you can search kind of in the archive, search for those previous episodes to grab gems. They both have their own unique skills and talents, which makes them an awesome team. They've obviously had a ton of success. He's obviously got a massive amount of entrepreneurial experience, wisdom, and insight. And I'm so glad that he's able to share that on shows like this, and that so you and I can both glean from all of that experience. They've, again, well over 2,500, 2,600, I think he said, multifamily units. Obviously got a ton of experience with construction and through the early house moving business, wholesaling, flipping, and all that good stuff. So lots and lots of great insight. And you can definitely tell he's somebody who speaks from experience. Sometimes, like we said, it's important to learn from other people's mistakes. And some people, we never stop to kind of look. It's always important to remember the wins, but just as important is to identify and acknowledge, hey, you know what? What's not working? What shouldn't I do again so that I can get a better result next time? So you go back and do a little bit of critical analysis on maybe you had a great year. Awesome. Celebrate the wins, but go back, take a look, say, okay, we did have a ton of wins, but how can we make this coming year better? It's common for people to say, well, I want this to be my best year ever. Well, I don't believe in that. I want this year to be my best year yet. My wife and I are always big to say that. We want this to be our best year yet, because I never want to put a cap on what the future holds. So again, if you had wins, awesome, but go back, dissect the losses, dissect what you can take away and implement into your current life so that the future's even brighter. Now, we're going through some economic turmoil right now. Of course, we want the future to be better, every year to be better. So he definitely spoke to some of that as well. Learning from the challenges of others is a huge one. He's got his new podcast that they just launched within the past couple of months, the Live 100. Again, sharing more of those types of insights regarding prior experiences, both in life and entrepreneurship. He got some good book recommendations, A Daily Dad. I'm definitely going to check that one out. Obviously, you guys know being a great dad is a high priority to me, and being great parents, I know is a great high priority for a lot of our listeners as well. But yeah, that's going to be it for the show. Again, don't forget to make sure that you're sharing the podcast with others. If you guys are enjoying the show, we'd love that 5-star review, just so we can help to promote the show to others out there who may need to hear words of encouragement or words of strategy and just how to navigate these tough times that people are dealing with. Everybody's dealing with some uncertainty in the market. Well, hey, you know what? We can do that with confidence if we're able to stand with each other. And so make sure that you're sharing the episode, make sure they're sharing the show itself. If you guys are here local, of course, we have our monthly meetup. I love seeing you guys out, and I love seeing people come out and want to get better, want to make improvements in their lives. So come out, shake some hands, meet some outstanding people that are doing great things here on the island and that have gone on to different points unknown across the US and around the world. So I love meeting you guys in person. So of course, if you're on island, please make sure that you're making plans to attend our monthly meetups. You can find out more about those through our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and More. You can find us on meetup.com. Just search for Honolulu Multifamily and More. We'd love to be able to connect with you and come out and meet a smiling face, put a face to the name, and connect with you a little bit more. Also, too, make sure that you're making plans to be at the next Hawaii Millionaire Mindset Conference. That's back here on Oahu. It's going to be back out of Kolina at the beautiful Four Seasons. If you guys were there last year, it's such an amazing place. Tons of great business people, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, really just runs a gamut in terms of experience level. But the quality of people is amazing out there. So just love feeling the energy of being at a great conference and being able to learn more, to meet more people. It's always a great time. So that's going to be next year, of course, July 10th through the 13th. Get your tickets now, of course. Start making your plans, especially if you can make it a business trip, or if you're here local, of course, just earmark that on your calendar. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. Going to go ahead and sign off and go out, take some action. Make sure that you're celebrating the wins, dissecting the losses. Go out, make a plan, get laser focused on it, implement it, and you'll see changes in your life that you really did not even think were possible. All right, guys, go out, take some action. We'll see you next time. Aloha.